Welcome to TED Talks.
I'm Missy.
And I'm Mariah. I'm a certified nurse midwife, and I'm a mom of 3 children, 7 and younger.
I'm a mom of 5, pregnant with my 6th. And we came together because we're women, just like you, and we saw a need. So we created a platform and a community for women called Beyond the Red Tent.
Right.
And we're taking it one step further.
To TED Talks. So TED Talks is a space where you can come and learn from vetted experts, real women that are willing to share their courageous stories about topics of holistic women's health.
And so you're here. We understand life is full. You're a busy woman. So this is only going to be about 30 minutes of a beautiful talk with either an expert or a real woman like yourself. So grab a cup of tea, sit back, and enjoy.
Who's going to blame it on my juice? Who's got the juice?
We got the juice.
Let's talk about juiciness. Let's talk about sensuality, the erotic, the tantra, the how do we get turned on again if we're young and unsure, or on antidepressants, or in peri-menopause, or married for a long time, and finding that new creative space in our sensuality and sexuality. So we just went through the first 3 pointers with Eva Clay. I'll go back to letting her introduce herself a little bit. And now we get to cover the last 2. So Eva, just really quick, would you introduce yourself a little bit? Because I know you have all sorts of background around sexuality and tantra and all in the Los Angeles area, and 23 years worth. So what's that about? What have you done?
Yes, I come from a long history, 20 years of being on the front lines of women's sexual health and wellness as a clinical psychotherapist and an activist. So I've worked in places like rape treatment centers. I ran a battered women's shelter. I worked at Planned Parenthood for many years. I was an HIV specialist. So healthy sexuality has been my dharma. It's my life's mission. And now I work as a clinical sexologist and sex educator and sex therapist. I do online courses for women, and I work individually with women, couples, and men. It's so juicy. It's the best job in the world. I just talk about sex all day.
Okay. So your first 3 pointers were, what were they again?
Mindset.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the first one was mindset.
Communication.
The second one was communication.
And the erotic versus the sensual, is that right?
Is to understand your eros.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, understand your erotic, and it as in distinction from your sexuality. Oftentimes we think that they're one and the same, and they're actually not. So let's continue.
4.
Yeah, tip number 4, sensual awareness. So you already kind of introduced this for us, Maria. Sensual awareness, so sensate focus is so important when it comes to sexuality, and for a couple of reasons. I'll give you 2 of the top reasons. Number 1, because it's about a pleasure mindset. So I want to invite you to become a pleasure researcher and start looking around in your life and just noticing what brings you pleasure, and specifically outside of the bedroom. So it could be your favorite food. It could be dancing. It could be the sight of your children playing, the sound of a child laughing, the smell of your beloved, of your partner. So when we begin to entrain the attention onto what brings us pleasure, it enlists what we call a neuroscience. By the way, I'm a former professor of neuroscience. I left that out. So I really love the brain. And when we entrain our attention on what brings us pleasure, it's called savoring, taking in the good, or savoring, taking in the good. And you let your attention rest on something for 20 seconds. It embeds and creates a neural pathway in the brain. So let's say you have sunlight on your face in the morning. This is every morning I wake up and I look into the sun. And you let it rest there. The brain begins to point attention onto pleasure. And the dopamine centers light up, and it rewards you with oxytocin and endorphins and opioids. And so then the brain will begin to look for pleasure in more things. So ordinary mundane things that didn't used to bring you pleasure, like a shower or vacuuming. Gosh, who gets pleasure from vacuuming? Well, the brain will begin to organize everything you do as pleasurable if you give it attention and call it pleasure. So
that just blew my mind.
It like goes back to the whole law of attraction. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I really love the concepts of law of attraction and Abraham Hicks, and I listen to a lot of it, but it just makes perfect sense.
Yes, it is connected. It's kind of like the scientific explanation of law of attraction. It has to do with how your brain filters information. So one example I use is like, I really hate numbers. Like math is so not my jam. So anything having to do with numbers, like taxes or accounting, it's like such drudgery to me. I literally hate it. So what I do to rewire that as pleasurable is, look, I have it all right here. I put my essential oils next to my computer and I'm smelling these beautiful oils as I'm doing my accounting. So I then begin to wire in pleasure into something that previously was not pleasurable for me. And so when we bring our
essential oils next to my diapers.
Yeah. Yeah. Or that song you love that you just played, like put that on when you're doing dishes.
Right.
You know, and start to wire that into the body. So when you start looking for pleasure in everything, things that previously were not so pleasurable or just kind of like with your partner begin to become more pleasurable. So the other piece of this is insensate awareness, is that a woman's erogenous zone is her entire body. So when we become awakened sexually and conscious sexually, we begin to realize that sex doesn't happen just in the genitals. It happens over the entire body, all the surface of your entire body, through your skin, through your mind, through your eyes, through your lips, through your feet, everything becomes erogenous. And so sensation. So I invite you to either do this yourself, you know, ideally practice on yourself, or certainly train your partner how to do this. When he or she sees the results, they're going to be really into it, is to touch your entire body before you even think about going into an act of lovemaking. I like to set a timer. If you have a male partner, this will work really well. I set a timer. I do. I set my phone and I'm like, I need 15 minutes of touch. And then I'll consider making love.
Totally.
And so you can use different types of touch. And this is something I like to teach in my programs and courses and my coaching, is like all the different types of touch to bring about a different set of nerve endings under the skin. It could be feather touch, it could be tickle, it could be just hovering the hand over the skin, it could be a sharp scratch. Sometimes we like a vigorous rub and a massage over the entire body. So we down regulate the nervous system and get the whole body online for the act of lovemaking. Last point about that, when you do that.
Did you feel, I don't know, my nipples are getting hard just having the conversation.
So your body is telling you you're a yes to this. Yay! So when you incorporate and install these like acts of foreplay and warm up to your lovemaking, you'll want more of it. Totally. Your desire will naturally come back.
Mm-hmm.
I've been feeling like lately really focusing on so many of the things that you're talking about. I don't know if it's being in my 40s or what, but finding pleasure in the things that I don't usually enjoy has been top of my list lately. And I've noticed that I enjoy my husband more when we're doing together. So, you know, even we were repainting the interior of our house, and most people are like, oh, don't do a remodel with your partner, you'll fight. We never do. Like as long as when we're doing together, we're in this really good space. And I had like an aha moment of, oh, we need more of that. Because then it brings me to that place of, ooh, he's kind of sexy while we're doing this thing. And now I want to touch him. And, it shifts the mindset. And it's really fascinating how we're wired.
Well, the interesting thing that I'm going through is as we talk through the first pointers, where my mind kept going is, my husband and I have been in a rough chapter of our marriage for the last, 9 months to a couple years. And I keep telling myself that what turns me on is feeling connected and communicating with him. But I'm realizing that that's me being in my head. Mm. And if instead I move into my body and I let go of that intellectual need to talk and connect through communication and simply turn it off and say, we're just going to touch one another in new, sensual, erotic ways, and set a timer for 15 minutes.
I love that.
All right.
I bet you anything I will feel more turned on and more desired and more desirable without having to be in my Yale brain,
Yes, I love that point, because I think that's the go-to for a lot of women, is that they think to get turned on, they need to talk more. And that certainly was one of our initial points, is to have skillful communication. But part of skillful communication is nonverbal communication as well. And skillful communication also means to know when not to talk.
Yeah.
When we talk, we go into the prefrontal cortex, the language center of the brain. And when the language center of the brain is activated, it shuts down the sexual arousal, the limbic center. So sometimes we can talk our way out of sex or think our way out of sex.
And here I am as a midwife. I know this. The worst thing you can do for a laboring woman is to ask her a question, because it gets her right out of her body and into her brain, and it can turn labor off. How is it that I forget that makes so much sense?
Yeah.
All right, what's number 5?
Okay. Yeah. Number 5, creativity. So we have a lot of new research that's come out in the last 5 years or so about women and libido. And what we are finding is that a lot of the beliefs we formerly held about men needing variety, women needing one man, all of that is untrue. Women need more variety than men do. This is what the research is telling us. Women get bored much more quickly with a single partner, and they need more variation in their lovemaking. So to turn on your creativity. Now this, do you see how all the keys really connect and overlap with each other? Because this goes back to mindset. What were you conditioned to believe about women and sex when you were young? That most women in the West, globally actually, were conditioned to believe that the man comes first, that his pleasure is primary, is the priority, that you have to get your man off or he'll be unhappy with you, or he'll leave you, or he'll cheat on you, or and so we forego and we forfeit our own pleasure. When the reality is women are now having affairs at the same rate as men, if not more. I think that number is growing, and it's an unfortunate number. So let's try to avoid that by installing more creativity in your lovemaking. So having sex in different places, having sex in different ways, tapping into the erotic mind. You see how all the keys connect here. So what are some unexpressed and unowned fantasies that might be lurking in your subconscious? Esther Perel talks about when you go on a date with your partner, with your husband or long-term partner, arrive in different cars. Arrive separately to the restaurant. I once had a partner meet me at a bar and pretend like he didn't know me and hit on me. And then we had a long, slow dance to the live music that was playing there.
That was a fun night.
Yes, it was.
The first thing I thought is, I'm making my husband take the minivan. I've got
Yeah, so you can spice it up by being more creative. And sometimes that includes let me say, a lot of people don't even know, well, what do I want? Or what would turn me on? I don't even know. I haven't explored this part of myself. And so that can initiate this luscious rediscovery of who you are as a sexual being. And so after you've become a mother, or after you've entered peri-menopause, or you're postmenopausal, your sexual desire set might completely reinvent itself. So the fantasies you had of a young woman, as a young woman, of like getting married or being chosen, or like, you know, I used to fantasize about my wedding when I was quite young. Now I do not fantasize about my wedding. You know, I fantasize about the stranger, the man I meet in the airport, or, you know, like, so to understand like sexuality is a lifelong adventure. Mm-hmm. And what you liked early in your marriage might not be what you are into anymore. So you can constantly keep peeling the layers back of your eros, but you have to have a creative mindset.
I have to share a quick little story. This last year for my husband's birthday, I thought to myself, what would I want? And so I got a hotel room. I got a sitter. I went to the room and I got it all set up with, you know, our oils and our candles and toys, and sent the kids off, and we went to the hotel at about 4:00 in the afternoon, made love. And then I had a dinner reservation, and of course he loved it, but it was the best gift to myself to take us out of our environment into somewhere new with new things and like new lingerie. And it was really all for me, but he was like, this is the best birthday ever. And so I would like to invite women to, like you said, what do I want? Your partner, if he's a man, is probably going to be really on board for playing around with what you want. Because like you said, really, a man who loves a woman wants her to be happy, wants to watch her have pleasure, wants her to come first. And like you said, we're training them. And so if it's your husband's birthday, make it about you. He'll be stoked.
Well,
Go ahead.
I love what you did intuitively, Missy. You know, Jack Morin, who wrote a wonderful seminal book called The Erotic Mind, has developed what he calls the erotic equation. And that is the intersection of mystery, novelty, and obstacle. So this is what creates sexual tension and chemistry: mystery, novelty, and obstacle. So you can begin to like weave this into your partnership and watch how it actually brings you into greater desire and sexual turn on as well. When we initiate this with our partner, we often will get it back, or what he'll bookmark is what you like. So sending him a little text during the day and saying, I have something special planned for you tonight. Mm-hmm. And just letting that mystery land, you know, and see, like, I look at the two of you when I said that, how both of you responded, like your bodies moved. Mystery is sexy, right? It
felt very possible to me. I thought, oh yeah, I already know what I'll send him. So I have two questions that are not around your top 5, and I have a story that I want to share too. So after the story, I'm curious around female ejaculation and anal orgasm. But what I keep going back to is, for those women that are still tuned in, maybe turned on, curious, that like age 18 to 30, where you're early in your exploration, I feel so much gratitude when I finished high school and then moved into a space where I felt ready to lose my virginity. That was where I was in my life. There was a woman who was erotic and sensual. She's still just so beautiful and voluptuous. And she was Irish. And she took me to Macy's, I think it was what it was. And we bought feathers. And then we went and bought chocolate and strawberries. And she had me make a mixed tape because I'm aging myself. And we got new pillows and a new bedspread and all these things. And she set up my little living room and my bedroom. And from my very first introduction was around acknowledging all the different senses. And I feel forever grateful for that initial introduction. And so I just want to really acknowledge, for those of you that are on the younger side, you likely don't see yourself as young, but to thank you for tuning in, and for those of us that are maybe in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, to be open to mentoring the younger women, to allow all of us to stand in our power and our sensuality. And so I'm wondering if you'd touch on that. And then if we have time, I really do. Like, female ejaculation and anal orgasms, are they a real thing?
I can tell you, I've had an anal orgasm.
I don't think I have.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You get a gold star. Wonderful. Okay, so where would you like me to begin? Sorry, I got derailed on the anal orgasm piece.
Well, let's talk about anal orgasms then. So is it true that there's clitoral orgasms, uterine orgasms, and anal orgasms, and then there's also the female ejaculation? Is that, I mean, in your opinion, are those all kind of true and different things?
Absolutely. 100%. Look, orgasm is a release of tension from the body. And orgasm is something that we can wire in through the power of the brain's association. So absolutely, anal orgasms, many women have orgasm from anal penetration if it's done correctly. There's a lot of erectile tissue around the anus. And there's a perineal sponge, like a lot of spongy erectile tissue right above the anus. And so physiologically, it's absolutely possible. So is female ejaculation. I know many women who teach it and who ejaculate. It's not pee, it's ejaculate fluid, and it is a real thing. If you're interested in that, that's a whole other topic on how to do that. But I first just want to really enforce that orgasm is possible from literally anywhere on your body. When I first began my studies in Tantra, so we haven't talked a lot about Tantra, but about 12 years ago, I began to study sexual Tantra. And what I learned is that through what's called coupling. So coupling is, again, using the brain's associative powers. You can induce an orgasm from anything and anywhere. So I went from being a non-orgasmic woman, or I could only orgasm from my vibrator, and to being I'm orgasmic about almost anything. Now, I will have a full body orgasm from a beautiful sunset or fireworks or a good idea. And I literally feel it wash over my entire body. When I have a good idea for my business or a creative epiphany, I will have an orgasm. Whoa. And so, yes, I call it the orgasm oracle. If you have any ideas you want to run by me, let me know. My body will tell you if it's a good one or not. But it's what we call a visceral orgasm. So that's what it's commonly referred to as full body. And so it just means that your nervous system responds, your sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system responds in a way that is so incredibly pleasurable that it sends the electrical impulse throughout the entire body, and you feel literally like there's ecstasy in your cells. The other type of orgasm is a localized orgasm. So that's clitoral orgasm, cervical, vaginal, G-spot orgasms, or anal orgasms. And it just comes from the consistent pressure and stimulation of the erectile tissue around that area. Yeah, I recently became cervically orgasmic, and I went through a process called cervical de-armoring with a sexological body worker, where my cervix was massaged enough and appropriately so that it removed the tension in my cervix enough, just where that it was stimulated, I would have an orgasm, and I do.
Wow.
Yeah, so all of that is possible. The how to do that, you can go deeper into my programs, or there are many people who are teaching this on how to create a condition in your body where you can access that. But it is available to every single woman.
And so if someone were to want to access your programs, they have to wait till the spring? Is that how does one go about accessing them?
Yeah, you can go to my website at evaclay.com and see what offerings I have coming up. I teach both virtual online programs. I often teach in person, and then I also do private coaching.
And can we assume that the coupon code for the Beyond the Red Tent community stays active?
Absolutely. Yes.
And so we'll figure out, do we know what that is now?
Red Tent 1 for single payments and Red Tent 2 for payment plans. So
there we go.
Those are numerical digits.
One of my girlfriends who's a big advocate of women doing solo trips, just self-care trips.
Mm-hmm.
And she took a trip, I think it was to Thailand. She went on her own. And she said on the airplane ride back, just sitting there in the airplane, she had 2 orgasms.
Yeah.
Because she was so filled up.
Yeah.
Kind of rocks my world.
Yeah.
So
I often, if I have an erotic dream, I often wake up in orgasm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a common occurrence. And then one more really fun thing, when my husband and I were first together, you know, it's so different when you don't have kids, isn't it? Together. But we were at the redwoods and up against a tree, and I had like multiple orgasms just from nipple stimulation. So I totally believe that in what you're saying, Eva, that we can learn how to have orgasm in many, many different ways. And I feel like I've unlearned that. That hasn't happened in a while. So this is a really good reminder for me to play around with that and explore that. And what do I want and what feels good to me? And I think as women, it's really important. I think we underestimate our sexuality and our sexual needs, and usually just, like you said, go, oh, the man is the one with the desire. And
I think we or at least I have been overestimating my need for communication. I think that's been one of my biggest key takeaways is in the midst of having young children and often feeling like we're passing in the night and not even being alone in our own bed anymore, thinking that I needed to feel connected through communicating, when really that's probably not where I need to start.
You need a foot rub and some sex in the bathroom.
Yeah, or just simply starting with touching one another and not talking at all and watching the erotic and the sensual build.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And feeling it build, not just watching it build.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite approaches, and Mariah, you might really enjoy this with your husband, is to make a no words context, but sounds only. Mm-hmm. So these primal sounds, you know, as a midwife, you probably know this, but like when we vocalize, it stimulates the vagus nerve, which connects right in through the genitals.
Yeah.
And so sounding for a woman will increase your pleasure during arousal, during lovemaking, but it will also increase your desire for sex. And so I love this exercise of just sounding like primal animal sounds when you're in some kind of active intimacy, even when you're massaging each other. No words, just sounds.
Love that.
Love it.
Yeah.
And so we're giving all women permission right now to make some noise when you're lovemaking.
Yes.
You know, I've always been a very noisy, or I guess orgasmer, is that a word, or lovemaker? And it's so, you know, when there's kids in the room and I have to be quiet, it's way less pleasurable than when it's just us and I don't have to worry about how much noise I'm making. And I think a lot of women probably feel that way.
As a midwife, once again, I'll walk down the laboring floor, and especially the hospital where I worked, because it had an exceptionally low epidural rate, it would sound as though there were women making love in every room.
Mm.
And I'll never forget, after giving birth to my first child, I was sitting at the dining room table, and in Hawaii, all the doors are open. It's just all screens. So sound travels. And I remember going, oh my gosh, I think our new neighbors are making love. Listen to that. She's having the most amazing orgasm. And kind of giggling about it as I'm holding my newborn baby. And right after that, I realized my mom was playing back the video of me giving birth. And what I was hearing was the sounds of me pushing and giving birth. And without the context of knowing that, what I heard was, oh my God, she's having an amazing orgasm. So just to allow us to fully embody all that we can. I mean, it just, the erotic becomes really exciting.
The wild, primal feminine.
Thank you, Eva. I really honor your time and what you do for women and men around the world. And excited to offer this up to women within the Beyond the Red Tent community that are looking. Shall we finish with the song again? Anything else?
Yeah.
I love that. What did you say? Wild, primal, feminine? There we go. Yeah, let's dance it out.
Yeah.
Primal feminine. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Here we go.
Yeah.
Don't forget to subscribe.
And if you also want to take a peek at our website, it's right here.